Right now, joining us on the phone line to talk more about the Philadelphia Eagles' big Week 1 win, he is Chris Franklin from NJ.com, and also check out the podcast with him and Mike Kay, known as the No Huddle Show podcast. He joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Chris, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well, Josh, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, and you know what? It seems like a lot of Eagle fans are pretty darn happy after that game yesterday, but I got to say, as I put on Twitter, Chris, when you spoke to Brian Griese, what you wrote about at NJ.com, that whole analysis became very prophetic because pretty much everything Griese told you at NJ.com was the formula for what we saw in the game yesterday.
Yeah, what do you know? Like, when you actually have a healthy offensive line, they actually do well. They did well. I mean, they gave Jalen Hurts a lot of time to maneuver, and they gave him a lot of space in the pocket, and when the Falcons actually did have defenders that broke through the line, he was able to have enough space to move around and make the plays do. I still can't believe that throw he made to Goddard in the back of the end zone. That did really well, and that became a product of the offensive line being healthy and intact, especially Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson being back. And you see it makes a big difference.
Why do you think, maybe we don't have the right answer for this, so that's why I'm just kind of putting it out there. Why do you think that the general public or the haters out there in the national media, why don't they value the trench play as much as an actual NFL team like the Eagles do?
I think if I had to look like from the outside, I think when you look at fantasy football, you see like all the attention and the glory goes to the skill positions. I mean, everybody loves the quarterback and they love to see the passes and throws. Everybody loves the receivers to see the big plays that happen there. But when you look at the five guys that are up there, somebody has to create time for those plays to happen. And given that the five guys the Eagles have there, they have a unit that's in my opinion, is in the top five. And when you have five guys that can go give you time, that can open up and create holes in the running game and wear teams down in the long run, it only bodes well for you. So I think a little bit it has to be fantasy football. It plays a little bit role in that.
Yeah, I would say the combination of fantasy, my personal opinion, Chris, it's a combination of fantasy football and sports betting has kind of confused people's ability to judge football on the field at times because they're so stuck on the numbers in those worlds that they forget about the football game is played on the field and not on their computer.
That's not a bad thing. Can you imagine having a prop bet on how many pancake blocks Jordan Mailata would have against the defensive end? That would be an interesting thing to see there. But that definitely plays a role too. I mean, like you can't go up to the window and you can't go, okay, well, I think the line is only going to give up 2.5 sacks today, and see that it's really tough to quantify and tough to follow along. You don't see that many even jerseys. You don't see that many offensive line jerseys. You see Lane Johnson and Jason Kelce because of their personalities, I think, and you don't see a lot of people wearing these jerseys of the offensive linemen, but they definitely do deserve some love.
Chris Franklin joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at C Franklin News. Check out all of his coverage of the Eagles over at NJ.com. Chris, talking about the guy behind the line, Jalen Hurts, I felt there's a huge difference from last year to this year, whereas last year you had a quarterback who was stubborn, a quarterback who held on the ball too much, and this year you have a quarterback that looks like the entire team is invested in him as their leader, in Jalen Hurts.
Well, I think a lot of times as well, too, especially when you're a rookie and you're able to run the ball and have the athleticism that he has, first thing you want to do is, I don't see the first read or second read, I'm going to go take off and use the abilities that were given to me. And the one thing I really like that he's done all throughout training camp, and even we saw on Sunday, is he's starting to go not only progress through his read, but he's letting the routes develop and take time. And it's a big key, and that's a big thing that separates from average quarterbacks to elite quarterbacks. Do you go back to your first read? Do you go back to your second read? Do you go 1, 2, 3? I don't like this, and then run. He's being more decisive. He's making some better decisions when it comes to when to run and when not to run. And then he's gotten a lot better when it comes to his accuracy as well, too. I mean, you can't ignore 52% from last year. You just can't. But one thing I saw as training camp is going along, he's been working with Brian Johnson, working on his footwork. His motion looks a lot better, and he's throwing the ball with a more compact motion, and he's getting into his receivers, and it's setting up for some nice yards after the catch and keeping drives alive.
You mentioned Brian Johnson. I remember, Johnson was at Mississippi State when Dak Prescott was there, and a lot of people might point to the fact that Hurts and Dak have a similar body type. So how much do you think that the experience that Brian Johnson had with Prescott is able to be applied to Hurts now, possibly?
I think there's some things there. I think you can see some similarities there. I just think overall it just comes down to when it comes to fundamentals. I mean, he took Kyle Trask and he made him look really good. And personally, my own opinion, think Kyle Trask is not going to be a big primetime player in the NFL. But you see, it all comes down to fundamental. But it does come down to fundamentals when it comes to that. Because there's so many times that you see if you don't have a good teacher that tells players, hey, you know what? This is what you look for. This is how you just go out there and do what you did beforehand in college. And you see it break down over time. I think when you look at guys like Tim Couch, who when he first came in the league, he had a lot of ability, but I don't think he had the right players, the right coaches that were able to harness that and maximize ability. And then after a while, he was out the league. So I think it's more about when you look at Dak Prescott. I mean, he has a lot of abilities. I think right now he's definitely getting hit and Hurts. But if they're at the same point in their careers, I don't think that. I think there's still enough of a difference between the two of them where it's two completely different quarterbacks.
You mentioned the teachers. It obviously goes back to the coaches, and the guy who was part of hiring Brian Johnson was Nick Sirianni. Chris, what did you take from the Eagles coaching staff yesterday in their debut?
Well, I liked the game plan they came up with, and they weren't afraid to shy away when something was going on, when something was working. They didn't shy away from going back to it. I mean, when you look last year when it came to Doug Peterson and the play calling and some of the selections they made, there were times where you saw there was a play run, say it was an outside zone run was working, and then it just seemed to get lost over time. It was like Sirianni has no problem with doing that. I mean, look at the first two plays. He went to first two plays. He threw a wide receiver screen to Quez Watkins, saw it worked, and came right back to it. And he has shown that he's not afraid to do that. And he's also, what I like is he's using the different formations to have some success and set up his players to do well, because they're throwing out 3 tight end looks. They're throwing out these exotic formations where you have 2 receivers behind each other, but it opens up the middle of the field to let Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell get some extra yards up the middle and let the offensive line go. So they're coming up with a good game plan, and they're using formations that helps them succeed in the long run.
Chris, what does it say to you that each of the top receiving targets from the 2018, 2020, 21 NFL draft all caught touchdowns in yesterday's game?
Well, I think we're in a passing league now. It's crazy to see that the amount of talent at the receiver position now is mind-boggling. I mean, you go back to Justin Jefferson, you look at even Devonta Smith, you look at all these guys that are out there, and you see the speed that they have, and everybody comes so advanced. I mean, I think it goes back to those times now where you got guys who are in middle school now going from 707 and being immersed in football, and they continue to go up through high schools. I remember it was when I was in high school playing a wing T system. Now you look at guys that are running like college-type systems there and all the no huddles, and I think it starts from that level, and they just keep continuing to grow and grow and grow. So by the time they are in the NFL, they're matured. They've had so much experience. There is so much physical ability. They matured to the point they're able to have this early success instead of waiting 2-3 years and then hoping that they develop into somebody that can stay around for 5-10 years at that.
Although I will say, you mentioned Justin Jefferson. Jalen Reagor did have more catches and more touchdown receptions than Jefferson did yesterday. But I know that people still hate Reagor, but I just want to say that, it's funny when you give the guy a chance to be successful, what he can do.
Yeah, and you know what? And the name I'm going to invoke, it may be in the same vein, but I think if he can be like a Todd Pinkston type player, and there's nothing wrong with a Todd Pinkston type player. At one point, I think one year he led the league in yards per catch, in yardage per catch. If you have a guy who can take the top off the defense, basically go down the field, either you go down the field on a fly route, or he can take a wide receiver screen. He's got the punt returner mentality. He can go ahead and make some big plays for you. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sure, would you like to have Justin Jefferson on the Eagles? Yeah, definitely. But now that you have other pieces around this offense is diverse, when you have Sanders, when you have Devonta Smith, when you have Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, you can do so much in the system that you don't have to rely solely on Reagor, and that can take a lot of pressure off of him, and he can still make a lot of plays.
Well, your memory doesn't fail you. Todd Pinkston twice was top 10 in the NFL in yards per reception, 2003, 2004. So there you go.
Hey, it helps he had T.O. on the other side, too.
It does a lot. Chris Franklin joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Covers the Eagles for NJ.com. Chris, let's flip it over to the defense. What you saw from the defense, there's a contingent of people out there who are saying the Falcons were really poor. There's another contingent of people who are saying the Eagles' defense was really good. Where do you fall in that argument?
I thought it was a little bit more of Arthur Smith. I think it was two-pronged. I think Arthur Smith abandoned the run a little bit too early. I thought they had some success. I saw the Eagles' defensive line look like either one guy or two guys at a time were over-pursuing gaps and not filling it, and that allowed the cutback lanes on the backside. And Cordell Patterson and Mike Davis got some huge yardage off of that. And then the one thing I liked is, goes like the coach said, Jonathan Gannon made some quick changes in the middle of the second quarter and at halftime, and then they shut it down eventually. You look at it, you saw T.J. Edwards and Sean Bradley get a lot more run on the defensive side, and the next thing you know, they're playing gap control, and the Falcons have trouble running the ball, and so they went to the pass more. So I like the adjustments that were made. I still think there's some questions, especially in the secondary long term. Avonte Maddox, he had some moments, but there were some times where he did miss some tackles. So I think it's a little bit in between there. But the secondary is the biggest question mark for me. But I think this defense is going to be a little bit better than what we saw on Sunday.
Part of that question mark is right now Marcus Epps still in the concussion protocol. Rodney McLeod didn't play last week. How much is that safety situation going to maybe be a bigger problem when you see a team like the 49ers?
I think it's going to be. You have to worry about Debo Samuel. I think that's going to be a big thing. I was a little surprised that Elijah Riley wasn't called up yesterday as one of the practice squad guys, and he definitely would have helped out yesterday when it came there. But luckily, for the Eagles, their offense was able to make up for that. But it could be, especially given what the 49ers like to do when it comes to the bootlegs, when it comes to the play action passes, that you want to have a veteran guy or somebody who can read what the offense is about to do and not get beat by not get too far sucked in trying to stop the run. And next thing you know, you have a wide receiver flying past you. So it's going to be something to monitor. Is Epps like that thing that's lost? I thought he was playing well at the end of last year, and I thought he played well even that little bit of time he played on Sunday. So it could come back to bite him. And if McLeod's able to come back in some shape form and look like he's healthy enough to play, I think that'll be a big boost, but that's a big question mark going into Sunday.
You mentioned who they did and didn't call up from the practice squad. How much of what happened Sunday, maybe with this safety situation, maybe was a learning lesson for Sirianni and his coaches? Maybe turn around and say, hey, we don't want to end up in that situation again. We need to be a little bit more maybe savvy when it comes to who we call up for the practice squad.
Well, I think it won't. I think it may be a little bit. I don't think it's going to be wholesale things. You won't see any additional offensive linemen come up with them or anything like that. I think it's a little. I think more. It's going to be more. I think if anything, there's going to be probably an additional running back. Maybe you bring up Jordan Howard to give you some more for power. But I think overall the safety on the secondary side, I think Riley's the only guy I would probably truly trust to come up right now, as opposed to some of those other guys. I mean, because Michael Jacquet and I was still have nightmares from last year. I had high hopes for him that he'd bounce back, but it didn't do it. So I'd probably say I don't think that not too much is going to change with that.
He's Chris Franklin. Give him a follow on Twitter at @CFranklinNews. Check out the podcast with him and Mike K, the No Huddle Show podcast, and check out his latest at NJ.com about Jordan Mailata explaining what his massive new contract extension means. That's all over at NJ.com. Chris, appreciate you jumping on today.
Hey, Josh, it was a pleasure, man. Thank you very much, man.